And a choice between Peter Dutton and the CSIRO, I go with the CSIRO. Now, thirdly, they've assumed their plan would need less transmission. On page 45 of their modelling, they assume savings because of fewer transmission lines. Now, they haven't outlined what transmission lines they would cancel, presumably not the Project Energy Connect, which is well under construction, presumably not Marinus Link connecting Tasmania and the mainland, which Peter Dutton has previously said he's committed to, which is a big project, presumably not HumeLink, which connects Snowy 2.0 to the grid. If they are to be taken seriously, they need to outline exactly what transmission lines they would cancel. And here's the thing. Doesn't matter how you produce electricity, you've got to get it to homes and businesses, and that takes transmission. And the transmission lines are full and need to be duplicated regardless of whether the power comes from renewables or nuclear. So that's a fatal flaw in their costings, and they have a lot of questions to answer about that. Now, we're going to do, obviously, more analysis when we've had more time with these costings, but just over the last couple of hours, we've found these three fatal errors which lead to a very big black hole. We'll be saying more about costings. I'll be saying more about other things like water use and other implications of their nuclear plan over coming days and weeks. But all this underlines one fundamental thing, that Peter Dutton is a huge risk to Australia's energy system and a huge risk to Australia. He's got basic facts wrong about energy all the way through his leadership. He said that a nuclear reactor would produce 1 can of coke of waste a year, when in fact it's 12,500. He said that he was opposed to big nuclear reactors, he only supported small nuclear reactors, and now he's proposing 5 big ones and hardly mentioned small nuclear reactors in today's announcements. He says he knows better than the CSIRO and AEMO. He is a reckless leader who is a risk to Australia. Australians need cheaper power now, not more expensive power in decades to come. The Liberals say that they can produce power on their own calculations, nuclear power by 2037, which every expert says is wildly ambitious and not realistic. But even if it's true, it's too late. The alternative is to keep going with the government's plan, which is seeing more renewable energy connected to the grid this year than any other year in Australian history. That's what Australians need. Cheaper power now, not more expensive power in decades to come. That is a real risk to Australia's future.
Energy Minister Chris Bowen has strongly rejected the Coalition's proposed nuclear policy, calling it the most expensive form of energy, after opposition leader Peter Dutton unveiled his plan to reduce energy costs by $264 billion compared to the Labor government's renewables-only strategy. This has sparked a fiery debate about the future of Australia's energy mix and the path to achieving net zero emissions by 2050. At a recent press conference, Dutton revealed the Coalition's nuclear energy proposal, which involves a diversified energy mix consisting of 54% renewable energy, 38% nuclear, and 8% from storage and gas. According to modelling by Frontier Economics, the Coalition's plan would cost $331 billion, significantly lower than the Labor government's $595 billion plan for a 94% renewable energy future. Dutton argued that nuclear power would not only decarbonise Australia's economy but also make energy cheaper, more reliable, and more efficient. He emphasised that nuclear energy would offer a stable and cost-effective solution for Australia's energy needs, helping to lower power prices and ensure a consistent supply of electricity for future generations. However, Bowen has criticised the Coalition's plan, accusing Dutton of making heroic assumptions about the feasibility of nuclear power. Bowen emphasised that nuclear energy is the most expensive form of energy, citing reports from the Australian Energy Market Operator, AEMO, and the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, CSIRO, which have concluded that nuclear energy is far more costly than renewable sources. In his response to Dutton's announcement, Bowen pointed out what he called 3 fatal errors in the Coalition's nuclear costings. The first error, according to Bowen, is the assumption that Australia will need less electricity in 2050 than AEMO's recommendations. The second mistake involves the rejection of AEMO and CSIRO's work, with the Coalition assuming a nuclear energy cost of just $30 per megawatt-hour. The third error is the assumption that nuclear energy would require significantly less transmission infrastructure than expected. The Coalition's nuclear plan is based on the idea that nuclear reactors would be built on the sites of existing coal-fired power plants, leveraging the existing transmission infrastructure. This approach, combined with the assumption of lower energy demand and the extended use of coal-fired plants, has contributed to the lower cost projections presented by the opposition. Shadow Energy Minister Ted O'Brien argued that Labor's energy plan was based on unrealistic assumptions about the future behaviour of Australians. He criticised the government for trying to force the hand of Australians to follow its energy preferences. O'Brien stated that the coalition's policy respects the choices of the Australian people while still working toward net zero emissions. He suggested that the Labor government was out of touch with reality and that their renewables-only plan would push energy prices higher. Bowen reiterated that the Labor government's plan to transition to a renewable energy future would not only lower energy costs but also create jobs and boost the economy. The government plans to phase out coal-fired power plants over the next few decades, replacing them with renewable energy sources like wind and solar, as well as gas and storage solutions for backup power. While the coalition has criticised this approach, Bowen argued that the transition to a renewables-based energy system was the best way to ensure long-term energy affordability and sustainability. He dismissed the opposition's nuclear plan as unrealistic, suggesting that the costs associated with nuclear energy would only rise over time. In contrast, the coalition has focused on the idea that nuclear power can provide a stable, low-emission alternative to fossil fuels, while also reducing the cost of electricity for Australian households. Dutton and his colleagues pointed to the significant savings offered by nuclear power, arguing that it would provide a more affordable and reliable energy future compared to Labor's proposed all-renewables strategy. The energy debate will undoubtedly continue to be a central issue in the lead-up to the next federal election, expected by May 2025. With energy prices already a significant concern for many Australian households, both sides are likely to continue pushing their visions for Australia's energy future. As the debate over nuclear versus renewable energy continues to heat up, it remains to be seen which path will ultimately shape Australia's energy future. Will the nation embrace the coalition's nuclear vision, or will it continue to push forward with Labor's commitment to a renewables-based energy system? The next few years will be crucial in determining the direction Australia takes in its transition to net zero emissions. Thank you for joining us on Aussie Pulse. Stay tuned for more updates on the energy debate and other political developments in Australia.